Which putter is actually the best?
I want to be able to play a zero torque. And every time I think about it, I just can't get myself to pull the trigger.
One of the big things about blades that I found is so difficult was the face is not very stable. 3 degrees, open or closed, and you miss by an inch.
To quote the Last Samurai, too many mind.
But I think that is the problem for amateurs. And you don't want to emulate them. That's like the middle-aged swing. This episode is brought to you by TRAQ Golf, the spray that gives you instant tour-level feedback on your ball striking. Spray, hit, improve. With TRAQ, you can even work on tour-level drills you might have been hesitant to try before, all with real visual feedback that builds confidence. If you're serious about practice that actually translates to the course, pre-order the starter kit now at traqgolf.com. That's TRAQ golf.com. Hey everybody, welcome to Off Track, the show where we take all the questions, hot takes, and debates from everyday golf and put them under the spotlight. I'm Charles, along with Roy. We're a couple tech guys turned golf addicts who decided to make a better world for golfers, so we built our own golf company. But before we dive in, do us a favor, hit subscribe on YouTube and follow the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so you never miss an episode. If you're already subscribed, share us with your friends. We also post clips all week long, so find us at TRAQ Golf on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok for highlights, drills, and all of our other golf content. In today's episode, we will be going over 3 questions. Which putter is best? Blade, Mallet, or zero torque? Should golfers swing smooth or hard? And for our third segment, we'll be joined by Richard Kim, Director of Product Management at GOAT Group, and we're putting him in the hot seat for a Build-A-Bag challenge. Richard sets the budget, Roy and I each build a full setup, and Richard decides whose bag he'd actually play. All right, let's get off track. But before we get into the questions, Roy, did you hear about Luke Kwan and the Internet Invitational that's going on right now?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. I mean, we've all been there, right? You wake up a little bit late for tee time and you're speeding to try to make it, and you're probably having to join your group on the second or third tee. But to wake up late for a 9:30 tee time is bad enough. But I think he was just so unapologetic about how late he was. Did you see that?
And he was like borderline cocky. He's like, oh, it doesn't matter because we're going to win anyways. And then they didn't win. They lost.
Right? If you're going to be late and if you're going to be cocky, you better back it up. But if you don't back it up, you just look kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. I guess it makes sense, but I never thought about it because it never happens. But they were saying how in a match play event, you would be disqualified if you're late. If you miss the first tee
you
box.
Just lose, right? You just lose the entire match.
I guess his excuse was he just flew in from Norway, but still set up alarms. And supposedly Luke is constantly late to everything. They had a shooting the day before and he was late for that. So,
oh my God.
I don't know. They're making a big thing about how he's the most hated golfer on internet right now. And honestly, after watching it, it didn't do him any favors.
No. I didn't really know a lot about him, but he's just not starting off on the right foot with me.
Yeah. I watch a few of his content and he does kind of have that decaf type of attitude.
Separately though, you saw Kai Trump got a sponsor's exemption. So she's going to make her debut on the LPGA.
Mm-hmm.
That's been interesting too, right? Because then now it's sparked a lot of debate about, hey, sponsors exemptions versus actually working your way onto the tour. How do you feel about that?
So I don't know too much about how sponsors exemptions work. Is she actually taking a spot away from another golfer?
I believe sponsors have a certain number of spots that they are allowed to fill as the title sponsor of the tournament.
But she's not stealing a spot from another professional that otherwise would get to golf, right?
Only if the sponsor would have given it to another professional.
Oh, okay. I mean, sponsors can do whatever they want. They're who's kind of bankrolling the tournament, right?
Right. That's fair. Yeah. It's just been interesting to see, right? Because obviously there's a politics overlay now on top of this because of her last name, right? And I'm not going to comment on that, but it's interesting that just because of this one personality that has a tie to politics and is getting a sponsor's exemption, which people get exemptions all the time. Right now, it's all of a sudden become this debate all across the internet.
Yeah, I do remember there being maybe not as big of a deal, but there was hoopla when I think Tiger got a sponsor exemption. And they were saying that he was stealing a spot from another golfer who would have had an opportunity. And obviously Tiger missed the cut. So I vaguely remember that.
Yeah. But, at the end of the day, the tours are a business, right? And if they're going to do something to get eyeballs because that's what they're in the business of, like, more power to them, right? So do what you can to get more people to watch your tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's about ratings, and the higher ratings you get, like in the future, that there are more opportunities for other golfers, right?
Right.
And so, I'm generally okay with it.
And then the other thing, we might need to do an entire segment about this, but I actually just saw Jason Day, because he doesn't have an equipment sponsor right now, is working with a manufacturer on getting 3D printed clubs and is changing his whole setup so that it's fully built just for him with like the same shaft, I think, starting from driver all the way through the clubs, right? A graphite shaft. Very interesting, right? Because now it's, have we reached the point of technology that you can literally golfer by golfer, swing by swing, obviously with a lot of money and resources, tailor your set to exactly what you need and exactly what you want, down to like, I want the offset changed or the top line changed.
Yeah.
Would you do that?
I mean, I'm a guy who tinkers with his clubs already, right? And I'm not even a pro. So if I was a pro, I do think I would take that approach. And I just looked it up. He's working with Avoda, which is the same company that made Bryson's clubs. And their face is not flat. It's actually slightly curved, kind of like a driver. And their thing is that even if you don't hit it in the center, like it will still go straighter. But yeah, it's interesting. I guess, I think if I was a pro, I would go that route where I want the best performing club technologically, data-wise, that also has a thin top line that looks like a blade, right? I would love to blend the two worlds and pick something that is perfect for me.
Yeah. And then it also begs the question, if it's that consistent in terms of what people would want, why haven't the OEMs actually made it that way? Or are they trying to balance too much for mass market sales? Separate topic for another day.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they're, like we just said about the sponsors, they're a business too, right?
Yeah.
And so, I can see why they're doing it in their way. But I do think it's a very cool time in golf where there are a lot of people outside of the major OEMs that are coming out, and they all have their niche. And I think it does speak to the fact that golfers have been wanting a bit more options than just what the OEMs are offering, right? I mean, Avoda, because of Bryson, I think they've been getting a lot more sales rate lately. Also, like Tacoma, which came out. Tacoma, I don't think would have done well at all 10 years ago.
Right.
And so I think it's kind of this opportune time for there to be some stirring of the pot, some innovation happening in golf. And I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Like TRAQ golf innovation.
Yes. Exactly. All right. Well, let's get started with our first question. And our first question is a pretty basic question. Roy, which putter is actually the best? Blade, mallet, or zero torque?
This is such a loaded question. For me, my core putting philosophy is you should play what is the most comfortable for you. That's both visually and balancing your performance.
Yeah.
I say that, but I always want to play a blade putter. I don't know if that's the right call, but I want to be able to play a zero torque. I want to be able to play an arm lock. I want to be able to play with the shaft going to the center of the club. And every time I think about it, I just can't get myself to pull the trigger. I always go back to a blade or what I'm playing right now, which is a mid mallet.
You just described my current setup.
Well, but you started with a blade, right? And you've tried mallets.
I did.
What made you go to your current setup?
So for me, I would agree that the blade is the most pleasing to my eye to look at from setup. With the mallets, depending on the design, even with alignment aids, it gets a little too busy at times. So a blade allows me to just squarely set up the same every single time. But the blade has the least amount of technology It also has one of the most arcs that you have to put on. And so I feel there are too many variables. And as we talked about in other episodes, my biggest philosophy in golf is to remove as many variables as possible, because I feel that allows you to become a better golfer. So I still play. I mean, the sick putter that I have is technically a blade shape, but it's so loaded with technology elsewhere that I've been able to play it. And it's been kind of that marriage of both sides for me until I recently pulled the trigger on the L.A.B. And so far in my garage testing, it's definitely outperforming my previous putter.
What would, if ever, make you go back to a blade putter?
I don't think there is anything right now that would make me go back to a blade putter. Yeah. I am a very poor putter in general. And that's why I started experimenting so much with the technology, because it was the weakest part of my game. And I started off with a blade putter. I mentioned I had the TaylorMade putter with my very first bag, and that was a blade putter. And then I had one of the TP blades, and then I had the Scotty Newports, and then I had the 009s. And then after the 009s, I started dabbling in Mallet's technology, and I've never looked back.
That's interesting. I mean, my first putter, when I started golfing, I had no Sherpa, no guru. I remember my sister and I just going to like a local golf shop, going to Dick's, just seeing what was like cheap versus realistic, and trusting the salesperson, right? Which you should never do. My first putter was an Odyssey 2-ball. So it was like it was a Mallet.
It's a cult classic.
Cult classic. I think between my family, we've owned like 4 or 5. My parents really liked it at one point, and so there was a few more that were purchased. As a family, we also now, except for my sister, all play Scotties. Completely transitioned out of that. I remember hating the feel of the Mallet. I didn't feel like I knew the weighting, what tempo the ball would come off, like depending on the tempo of my swing. And this is pretty consistent with me for Mallets. There's this weird mental block for me where I understand what it's going to do speed-wise coming off of a blade. And I think maybe that's where a lot of my confidence comes from. It does exactly what I feel like it's going to do. And we've talked about, I'm a feel player very much. Most of the time, I don't even line my ball up. I just kind of pick a spot. I gauge where, I do my little, like, how far is this going to roll? And I am by no stretch of the imagination a good putter. So maybe this is an argument that I shouldn't be doing this, but that feels way more natural to me. Like this last round that we played together, I did a quick aim point and you were shocked and you were like, oh, did you just aim point? I made the putt, by the way. So for me, I think the importance of the feel, the look, and all of the blade putters are all copies of the first Ping,
the
answer model, back in the day. But they feel right. They feel traditional. They feel great in my hand. I want to like the technology, but I just haven't been able to pull the trigger yet.
That's interesting, because didn't the 2-ball have the white hot face, the Odyssey white hot?
It did.
And people love that insert. They recently brought it back, I think like 5-6 years ago, because they wanted that original insert, but you didn't like the feel of that?
No, I didn't like it. The feel was okay. It was more, it always came off, I think, a lot heavier than I was expecting. Right? The roll, it would roll out further than I was expecting. Right? There's a little bit more mass and therefore a little bit more momentum transfer to the ball when you get to the Mallets. And I tried the Spider, the model that DJ made famous a few years back when he was winning everything. I had that. My sister stole it out of my bag, but I let her because I was not putting well with it at all. And so there's just this weird mental block for me where I can't soften my feel, or I can't shrink my swing, whatever way you want to think about it, so that I get the roll that I want to get.
So a lot of times with blades, the argument is that most putters leave it too short. And that's the whole point of the inserts. The insert is to get that true roll, because amateurs are so inconsistent at, number one, hitting it in the middle, but also hitting it with the right loft. And so there's too much skid or bounce, right? So it's very interesting to hear that you didn't like the roll because it rolled. To me, the way that I'm hearing it, you're saying it rolled too well. It rolled too pure. And so because of that, you didn't like the insert, like the white hot especially.
I think I'm taking a page out of your book. There's a little bit of a consistency thing here, right? The consistency, maybe I'm always mishitting my blade putter, but I've just gotten accustomed to that inconsistency. And therefore being able to like hit it pure, but I don't think that's it, because I think I'm hitting my putter correctly. I don't know. Maybe we need to go check now. I think there's just something about the momentum of the mallet. And I remember hearing the same thing as you. If you miss hit, especially on the blades, especially if there's no insert, you immediately lose 10 to 15% of the distance off of a putt, either on the skid or just because the momentum's not transferring correctly. It's not that for me. It's just more of I somehow I'm more used to a blade, even though I started with a mallet originally, and the feel of it just feels more natural to me. So for me, that confidence that I get from the feeling of liking it just outweighs everything else for now.
Interesting. So one of the big things about blades that I found is so difficult was the face is not very stable because it is constantly swinging back and forth. And I think it's 3 degrees open or closed and you miss by an inch.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I can get it like within 1 to 2 degrees every single time I'm putting. So when I first went to a mallet, and I went to the mallet during the Spider craze when DJ was, when he won the US Open with the Spider Tour. And then almost all the top players were playing the Spider Tour X's, right? Like Rory still plays that. Scotty plays that. Tiger even experimented with it for a while. And so I went to that mallet style. And since then, I have played around with so many different brands. So it started off initially with like even roll, because even roll, maybe you'll like the even roll because the even roll, everything is about 5 to 10% shorter, but you can hit it anywhere on the club face and it'll go the same distance. That's their thing. That's why it's even roll, right? So maybe you'll like that in a mallet since it doesn't roll as far. But I didn't like the even roll because I felt like I really had to kind of power every putt to get to the hole. And then I experimented, I think with like Odyssey also made like a similar insert where there were literal, like it looked like little hooks along their club face. And then the last putter that I had, which is the Sick putter, it's a blade. But that's also when I converted to arm lock. And so that club face stability was a little bit more there, even though it was a blade shape. But they also had the descending loft technology, which essentially in the club face, it has 4 different lofts. So no matter how much loft I'm adding or decreasing, I'm still hitting it at the optimal loft. So I think I'm a huge fan of technology. And the moment I switched from hitting my 009s, a blade putter, to something with more technology, my putting just has changed drastically. And when I moved to arm lock from a traditional, again, there was a huge jump. And so I like to think that among my friends, at least from 5 feet in, I'm one of the more consistent putters now, but that wasn't always the case.
Yeah. It's you bring up something interesting. And I agree with you. Out of the people that we play with, you're definitely the best putter from, I'm going to give you 10 feet in. I think you're the best putter in our group.
Thank you.
I am more uncomfortable with the 3-footers than I am with the 20-footers. And I think maybe this has something to do with it, where I feel like for the 3-footers, I have to take such a gentle swing, such a shortened backswing, shortened follow through. And with the mallet, that feels even more exaggerated. Maybe that's why I don't like it. Right? I mean, I don't like the shape. I don't like what it looks like either. But I think the baby putts is what I'm so uncomfortable with. And this also goes for my chipping and for my long irons and my driver. Anything that I have to like be more careful about my tempo, how much I'm bringing it back, I struggle with that, right? It's like this natural instinct that I'm fighting. And I'm just realizing now, as you're saying, because you're really good and comfortable 10 feet in, I'm more comfortable. I don't think I'm going to make them as much, but I'm more comfortable with the longer putts. I think partially due to the fact that I know I can go back a little bit further, be a little bit more aggressive with my putting stroke, and I'm not going to launch this onto the next tee box.
That's so interesting because I, from just a visual standpoint, felt the opposite because blades are so thin that even if you're moving back 3 inches, it felt like more of a move than when I'm moving a mallet 3 inches. And so it made me very uncomfortable hitting like 5 foot and in with the blade because I felt like, oh, it's moving so much. And also the club face, you have to fight it to keep it straight. Even if it's like 2-3 inches, it's much easier for it to swing open on a blade. And so because of that, blades, I love the way they look, but I could never go back. And with an arm lock, or also let's talk a little bit about zero torque. They're obviously meant to go a lot more straight back and forth. So I actually struggle with lag putts with mallets, arm lock, and even a zero torque, because your body can only keep the putter face straight for so long. And then you start to turn your shoulder in a way where it will open.
Right.
And so even with the arm lock, I struggle with lag putting. And I think most people do with arm lock, because it suddenly becomes you're adding variables and the face opens. Whereas you're used to everything 10 feet and in being the club face being very square to the target.
I guess there's an interesting part of that, which is why not just let it open? Like, I know the argument of what you're saying. It's like you're adding the variable, right? But if the variable is going to be added anyway, why fight it?
That's why you just got to work on your chipping, get it to 5 feet, and
just hit everything close so that you only have 10,
and then just be automatic from there.
Okay, so here's the final question for somebody like me, or maybe our beginners out there, our average amateurs that I like picking on. If you could only pick one component of what to change in their putter setup, whether it's an arm lock, zero torque, or maybe going to a mallet versus a blade. All zero torques are mallets, right?
They're all mallets.
Okay.
No. The L.A.B Link is a blade.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do it that way.
I didn't like that one though.
Oh, I might like that one.
Yeah.
So for me, or for the average amateur, would you recommend, and you can only pick one, the arm lock, the zero torque, or going to a mallet?
I am a huge proponent of zero torque. And now there are so many brands besides L.A.B that also have zero torque. Odyssey has their version, although I think it's super, super ugly, even uglier than the L.A.B. TaylorMade actually has a Spider ZT, which I think is really, really great to look at. My brother had it, so when we were in Arizona, I got to test it versus the L.A.B. And they have the pure roll insert, which makes it feel really, really nice. Whereas the L.A.B, my one concern with L.A.B is that I never loved the feel, because it's an all aluminum body. And so there's no insert. Obviously there is face milling, but it's not the same.
Right.
And so I didn't love the feel, but other companies are coming out with this. So zero torque would be actually my go-to for a beginner, because it removes that so many of the variables in putting. And I think it simplifies putting. And if your body's already not, doesn't have the muscle memory of hitting other putters, I think zero torque is the easiest for a beginner to pick up and learn.
I might have to give it a try. Go zero torque, blade style, arm lock, and see what it does for my putting.
Yeah, from a logical standpoint, it's really hard, I would say, to argue with the zero torque, because with every other putter, you have physics working against you.
Yeah. I have no counter argument. Scientifically, technologically, I think you're right. My argument is purely the vibes, the feel, the traditional aspect of having a blade putter that you're holding with both hands. Just feels right to me.
Yeah, I think there's a golf meme where like a blade guy lips out like a 5-footer, and he's like, "Yeah, but it feels good."
I'm that guy.
Yeah. The other thing that I think, it definitely shouldn't like be a consideration for the beginners, but a lot of professionals now play zero torque or mallets. I think only like 20% play blade. And so I think the professionals are also seeing that technology is helping them, especially when there's millions of dollars on the line.
Right.
And so they're making that switch.
Yeah. If millions of dollars are on the line, forget the feels. I'm going with, whatever is actually performing the best for me. In which case, I would say go in for a putter fitting. Right? I think one of the most underutilized fittings out there, even though I started by saying I'm a proponent of you got to feel good about it. You got to like the way it looks. But they'll take that into account at a putter fitting, right? So
yeah,
if you're on the fence or if you're in the market, like absolutely go check that out, because I think that can do more for a beginner's game and their score than probably any other fitting in the bag.
If you are looking at just one club, right, not a grouping of clubs, you will probably use your putter on more swings, right? And there's that saying in golf, right? You drive for show and you putt for dough. And I will say that is absolutely correct. When I am scoring in the singles, those are the days where I am putting lights out. And I my driver isn't perfect on those days, but there are days where my driver is perfect and I could still end up shooting like a bogey game because my short game and putting is off.
Right.
So I do think a putter is very, very important. I do want to add one note, especially with L.A.Bs, because I've been doing a lot of research on L.A.Bs, and obviously I just pulled the trigger on one. L.A.B has a online fitting where you send them 2-3 videos from different angles. And I don't love it. I did that fitting, and then I did personal fitting as well, and the numbers were off. My background is in computer vision, and on the technology side, there's so much to a camera angle that can throw off what your body is actually doing. And so I am not a fan of L.A.B's online, take your video and then we'll fit the putter for you. So if you are able to, I would still do some sort of in-person fitting, or if you can actually do a professional fitting where they use technology like Sam Putt Lab and things like that. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, definitely not the online stuff. Don't do the online putter fittings. Don't do the online ball selectors. Those are all very basic stochastic models that are not taking you as a person into account. So,
yeah. Well, let me ask you this though, Roy, because you play right now a mid mallet.
Yeah.
Did you touch up on why you went from like a blade to a mid mallet?
Yeah, it was this curiosity of like, I just can't hit a full mallet. I just don't like them. Would I perform better with a mallet? So my mid mallet was kind of this experiment of, if I get halfway there, does it improve maybe just a little bit, but I still am okay with the general look of it. I've gotten used to the mid mallet enough. And you know, it's the Scotty Cameron fastback, the Newport fastback. It's basically, it feels like a blade where just like the bottom part of it has been extended out a little bit. The top line, most of the top line, and the general shape of it, the neck, I have the curved neck. I do like the plumber's neck from a visual standpoint, but the curved neck has always been a little bit better for me. It just felt like good enough for me visually, but compromised to try more of the quote unquote mallet technology. Let's not call it technology, but my touch and my feel around it was a little bit better than I think both just a pure blade as well as a pure mallet. So ironically, it just ended up being the best putter for me at the time. And since then, I haven't really looked, because if I look, I'm going to buy something, and then, you know, it's been doing pretty good for me.
If the feel and the roll is something that you like the consistency of, how come you never tried a Scotty mallet? Because they use the same milled face, or like, depending on the year, they have all the same inserts. How come you never considered a Scotty mallet, like a full mallet, like the Phantom?
Yeah, they're hideous. Like I cannot play it. They just look disgusting to me. Something about it visually just really, really throws me off. I just don't like the way that they look.
Have you looked at their, I think it's the Studio Fastback line?
That's the mid mallet. That's the one that I'm playing.
I think there is like a full mallet version. Yeah, it kind of looks like, you know, that Odyssey that...
Oh, the one where it's like there's a gap in the middle and then it gets longer. I have not, actually. I would be curious to see how I do with that one.
Because when was it? When was the US Open in LA?
2 years ago.
Okay. So the putter that was made really, really popular in that tournament, I think it was the Jailbird, the Odyssey Jailbird, right? And Scotty basically copied that and made it theirs. And that's the fastback. And so I feel like that might work really well, or that might be a good transition for you if you ever decide to try a full mallet.
The fastback 1.5. Yeah. I just looked it up. You know, if I'm going to go mallet, I'm probably going to go check out a L.A.B, check out an arm lock, see what that could do for me. I have always been curious about the arm lock, so that might be the thing that I try.
Oh, would you consider switching to arm lock after seeing my amazing putts?
Yeah, in my mind, arm lock makes sense because you're taking all of your wrists completely out of the picture. So I can wrap my mind around arm lock. I think I just have been hesitant to pull the trigger, just from a traditionalist, I like my setup kind of a feel. If I was going to go buy a new putter today, I think arm lock would be the thing that I would want to try. More than the zero torque, more than going to a mallet or anything. I'd probably do something similar to what you have right now with your SICK, which is the arm lock on a blade.
Well, I'm probably not going to be using that anymore. So if you want to try it, you're more than welcome to try it.
Maybe.
Now, I know we didn't touch up on this, but what's your opinion on broomstick putters? I feel like a third of golfers in the world think they should be banned. I mean, they also think arm lock should be banned. But arm lock, you're not really anchoring it anywhere. Whereas I think the issue with broomstick is, illegal for you to rest your club on your chest.
Yep.
But with a broomstick, there are times where I'm like, aren't they basically resting it on their chest? It's like part of your thumb is touching your sternum.
I think the thumb is also not allowed to touch the sternum, right?
It's not, but when you watch in like slow motion, you're like, wait, they're basically resting it there.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to simulate. Like, obviously, it's not going to be as stable as it actually sitting on your chest. But if you learn to just like lock all of the muscles in your lead arm, right, then you basically get the same effect as the broomstick. I think they should be illegal. But the argument for it is it takes out some of the traditional aspects of what is intended to be a golf stroke. And so the arm lock, like, yes, it takes some variables out, but you're still doing what is considered a traditional way of striking the ball. And I agree with that, right? Golf was designed to be played a certain way. If you start changing it, then it becomes something different. It's not golf anymore. And more power to you if you want to do that in your own personal game. But I think in terms of like the regulated tournaments, there should be something about the way that it was always intended to be played that should be held pure. Do you agree?
I do.
Okay.
The only reason I hesitate with the broomstick is because I feel like once they ban the broomstick, they're going to come for arm lock next. And I don't want them to ban the arm lock. So that's the only reason I'm a little hesitant, but I do agree. I don't think you should anchor it on your chest. If I wasn't allowed to use arm lock, and this is the putting grip that I used before going to arm lock, I would use left hand low. And left hand low is something that was made very popular by Jordan Spieth, who also played a blade putter, but his takeaway is very square to the target. He played the blade like a mallet. And left hand low essentially allows you to lock your left wrist in a position similar to arm lock. And so I would go back to left hand low if arm lock was illegal. But
and it keeps your shoulders more level, right? That's the other part of it, which is you're introducing less variability in just even your setup, which I think there's definitely something to that. I got told by a buddy of mine that I should absolutely switch to left hand low. I don't have the time to practice, honestly, to make it work for me, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It took a while.
Go arm lock before I go left hand low.
Yeah, it took me about 4 months to get used to it. But yeah, I think that's also another good option for people that want to remove variables but don't want to go to something like an arm lock. Did you mention what type of putter you would recommend to a beginner if they were starting out?
No, I didn't. I'm going to contradict what I've said previously a little bit. If I were to recommend to a beginner and their goal was to get really good, not just go out and have fun, but their goal was to get really good, I think I would recommend that they look into either a mallet or a zero torque. I do think the blades are just, it's a traditional feel-based thing, and there is no other rationalization for why you should play one now.
Great.
All right, so on to our next question. Every golfing video out there says don't swing too hard, but as soon as you step up to a wide open fairway and a driver, most people look like they're trying to launch to the moon. Obviously, if you swing smoother, you should make better contact, but can you really fight your natural tempo? So here's the real question. Is swinging smooth actually the smart move, or is it just an excuse for people who hit it a little shorter? What's your take, Charles? Is swing easy realistic, or is it bombs away every time?
So I very much cater to the grip it and rip it type of philosophy when I was learning golf. And it also kind of appealed to me, that philosophy, because I was coming from being an athlete. And so I loved going 100 miles per hour. And even today, I don't really know how to hit like 50%, like 70%. Whatever I do, I shank it actually, or my club face is wide open. I think when I picked up golf, there was the philosophy of you can never teach speed. And so just hit it as hard as you can. And then you can learn your techniques and learn better ball striking and things like that. But I am in that process right now of trying to smooth out my swing. So my driver, for example, has lost about 4 miles per hour because I am swinging it like technically smoother. But a lot of people think when you say swing smooth, it's about swinging slow. And I guess if you look at the data from a miles per hour standpoint, you are swinging slower, but it doesn't really mean like you have to really slow down your swing. I think it's more about swinging in sequence. So I'm in that process right now.
That's interesting because I started off at the same place as you, right? Which is when I first started golfing, I naturally, just being athletic and young, and the way that my first coach taught me, I swung very aggressively. The transition was smoother, but it was still a very aggressive swing. That plus chasing distance led for me to have a very aggressive swing, almost out of control, like swing out of my shoes. So I spent a really long time trying to smooth out my swing, go slow, really match a solid tempo and rhythm. And I think when I think smooth, that's really the key, right? Are you swinging with a solid tempo and rhythm? Since then, I have tried to work back to aggression. Because I think I have introduced so many bad habits in trying to smooth myself out and fighting my natural rhythm. Because everybody does have a natural rhythm. It's the part of their muscle memory, their athleticism, whatever it is about their own body and own instinct, that I believe that if you try to fight that too much, you start introducing too many other aspects into the mental game of your swing, that it's actually going to mess you up. And there's scientific evidence for this, which is when you break your natural muscle memory, you start using more of your prefrontal cortex. To quote the Last Samurai, too many mind. Right? You have too many things on your mind as you're about to hit. And it turns into a very mental swing versus it being something that relies on your natural athleticism and the muscle memory that you've developed.
But what if the muscle memory that you've developed is not correct?
Well, that's probably going to be the case more often than not. There's two parts, the specific sequence and way that your muscles move and the tempo at which you fire those muscles. For me, I'm saying don't fight the tempo and speed at which you fire it. Fix the order in which you do and how you fire them.
So that is kind of what I'm going through right now, because I think my sequencing was wrong. When I just grip it and rip it, I was exerting all of my energy and most of my swing speed at transition and not at impact. And so I am trying to change that. But I guess for me, like that is that prefrontal cortex thing. Like that is actually me trying to like reprogram the mind and eventually the body. But I very much feel like I am thinking a lot more now that I am smoothing out my swing. So it's interesting. Right. Like, do you feel like you have basically reprogrammed yourself in a way where now you are wanting to go back to a more aggressive swing with that new sequencing in place?
I think it's less about having a new sequence in place or programming. I think it's more going back to what my body wants to naturally do. The sequencing for me or the smoothing out was just fighting so many things, including my sequencing, including the technical aspects of my swing. But I was just fighting all of it. And, you said something that I think is very true for most beginners out there and most amateurs out there, which is we all fire everything all at once from the top of our swing. Yeah. I have a drill on our Instagram and YouTube and TikTok for those interested on how to actually correct that. But there's a difference between learning the proper sequencing, learning the technical aspects, training that for yourself, and how you incorporate that into when you're actually going out to play golf. And I think that's the distinction that I'm making. Should you take smoother swings in practice, especially working on technical things? 100% yes. I do believe you should do that. But I also believe you have to work on that and work on incorporating it up to full speed and practice it at full speed, whatever that is for you, right? The full fire for you, to be able to accurately translate that into the course and be able to actually game it.
This conversation reminds me, I think a couple weeks ago, I was struggling with my driver and I was trying to fix my sequencing and being a little bit more smoother at the transition. And after a while, you were just like, just don't think, just fire everything at the top. And the moment I did that, my driver was back. Like I was like hitting it like straight. I was bombing it. So I feel like while I'm listening to you, you're trying to get back to that where you're thinking less. But how do you differentiate that and exerting all of your energy at transition and firing everything incorrectly at the top?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think there's two things. One is, if you think about a pendulum, any pendulum slows down towards one end of the arc before it comes to a complete stop and then moves the other way. Hideki is obviously the extreme example of this, where he goes to a full stop in his swing. And those of you that haven't tried, you should absolutely try this next time you're out at the range, because in my mind, sometimes I copy Hideki and I do a full stop and I go back and look at the video and I didn't pause at all. But I think there's an element of just knowing that in the transition, you're not tensing all of your muscles at once, right? Which that's what a lot of people swinging hard feels like, which is they just tense everything. Swinging hard and introducing speed does not equal exerting all of your muscular strength all at the same time. So that's one. And that action alone, I think, helps you focus where you want to exert a lot of that speed and energy. And that's obviously at the bottom of the arc of the golf swing, closer to the ball. The other is made famous by this Tiger quote. And I kind of live by this now, which is swing as hard as you want, so long as you can stay in balance at the end. Yep. And there's something so astute about that, which is if you can stay in balance, that means you controlled every muscle along that swing. Versus firing something so hard that you didn't have the physical capability to stop or control it on the other side. So that's the other element. It's, again, saying the same thing. It's not firing everything so hard and tensing all your muscles. It's swing, build speed, use your rhythm, but do it in such a way that you stay in control the whole time.
Yeah. I think that thought of tensing up at the top of your backswing is very, very important for golfers because that's what I used to feel like. And when I am smoothing out my swing, I don't feel my body is as tense at the top. It's still coiled, but there's a difference between being coiled and you're just flexing your entire body, right? And that's what I used to feel like. Another analogy that I love is when you are whipping a towel, you're not tense at the beginning of you trying to whip that towel. And I wanted to say it was like Mythbusters or somebody did a test where they actually found that if you were tense and swung as hard as you can at the beginning, you actually generate less speed than when you're relaxed and you make that whipping motion. Right. And so that's essentially what you're trying to do with golf. For me, one of the reasons why I was okay with making that transition to smoothing out the swing is because I actually noticed that even with swing speed loss, I wasn't losing distance in the actual ball speed and the carry distance. And that's because our clubs are designed that if you are hitting it at the optimal position, then you're going to get more distance just generally. And so I think hitting it on a heel strike, but with 10 more miles per hour, it still gives me the same distance as if I'm just getting 10 miles per hour less, but I'm getting optimal contact. If you use launch monitors, they have something called the smash factor. But I noticed that my smash factor is a lot higher, especially when I am swinging smoother and I guess by definition a little slower than when I am just firing from the top. Yeah. So that's the one thing that's really allowed me to transition and from an ego standpoint, allow me to accept me slowing down my swing and swinging is smoother.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I can use the same argument you just made for the other side, right? Which is if you're not going to lose any distance or your distance isn't going to change between going slow and going hard, then you might as well do the thing that comes naturally to you.
Absolutely.
But that said, I'm gonna actually take your side of the argument for a second and contradict myself, which is the best round that I've ever played, and you were there for that. I clubbed up on every single shot and swung at 80%, a smooth swing, what I considered a smooth swing, and everything was in control. My course management was great that day.
Yeah.
Since then, over the dozens of rounds that we've played together, I have not been able to mentally replicate that. Even if I tell myself today is going to be a day where I just club up, inevitably 3, 4, 5 shots later, I'm just like, oh no, I'm just going full send. And I can't, there's something for me that's a mental block of I can't bring myself to pull the 8 out and just take a smoother swing. And I think for me, that's been a big part of why I say, you know what, just go back to what feels natural to you, because there's this mental calories that are burned for me, just trying to focus on changing my game and changing the way that I approach it in such a way that I have to switch the type of swing that I just know how to do.
Another point that really allowed me to transition into this more smoother swing is being able to hit approach shots from a P3 position, which is arm parallel to the ground. And there's content on our Instagram where I was preparing for a tournament, so I use the same thing, but it's increased my score. I want to say that it's shaved off about 5 strokes from my score.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Instead of hitting a full lob wedge or a sand wedge, me just grabbing my 52 or my pitching wedge and just hitting a P3 half shot, that has allowed me to hit so much tighter dispersions and green in regulation. So I think that type of practices have allowed me to see the importance of being more efficient rather than just swinging as hard as I can.
Yeah. You know, I like the concept of what you're talking about, which is the smoother swings, the control swings, because ultimately when I say swing hard, it doesn't, like we've said, it doesn't mean out of control, right? I think ultimately you always have to retain a semblance of control of what you're doing. And like you said with your drill, one of the ones that I like using a lot is intentionally slowing your swing down to 50% of what it is. I use it a little differently, right? I use it as a check of, am I actually sequencing everything correctly? Am I firing everything correctly? And you should, for all our listeners, go check our Instagram. It's to take your 100 to 50 club. You take a full swing, but only have it go 100 yards. And for me, it's a great diagnostic tool. The part of that drill that I didn't mention in our video that maybe I should have is afterwards, you have to work your way back up using those feels that you've developed back to your full speed. I agree with you though. Do the things that are going to keep you in control, use them, sequence correctly, make sure you're in tune with your body. But with all of those elements, once you have them in place, build it back to a rhythm that feels natural to you, that you're not going to have to think about what is this rhythm. And if that's what you're saying, which is go to P3 and then from there use your natural rhythm, and you know that's going to work for you versus trying to go back to a full swing and intentionally slowing it down on the course, I think that's a great way to approach that shot.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of like out of sequence, but remember when you talked about the Hideki swing? Yeah. Just for you know, the amateur golfers out there, Tiger also did that swing when he started with Harman. He said he hated doing that drill, but Butch would basically tell him to go to the top of his swing and just freeze and then work his way down because he was firing too hard. And even Tiger was, you know, he was overextending because of his junior golf days. So it's not just the amateur problem. Even the pros have to do this. So I do think for those of you that just feel like from a range ego perspective, you just want to like fire. Even Tiger had to do this and smooth out his swing. Yeah. I had a few just notes that if I was talking to beginner Charles, what are a few things that I would say? And here's a few messages that I would say to him. And I think it should resonate with most amateur and weekend golfers as well. In the beginning, I thought I was losing distance because I was not trying hard enough or because I was physically not strong enough. But the reality was that I was just missing the middle of the face. And so I think hitting the middle of the face is way more important than you feeling like you have to hit as hard as you can.
Yeah.
The other thing for me is under pressure, I feel a smoother swing for me has allowed me to perform better than when I was just swinging as hard as I can, because you have adrenaline flowing. The other group is behind you watching you swing. And so, yeah, that smoother transition has really helped timing under pressure, which is very, very important in golf. And I think, I would tell myself, you can't muscle timing. Smoothness is really more your body catching up to get on sync. Whereas before I was just getting ahead of everything by firing everything at the top of my swing.
Yeah. You know, I've been making the argument for swinging hard the whole time. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning, you know, if I could emulate any professional swing, obviously number one is peak Tiger. Who wouldn't want that swing?
Yeah.
Number two, though, is Fred Couples. Freddie has just the most beautiful looking swing in my mind. And it's very old school. It's very just, you know, it looks almost lazy, right? With how smooth he is, especially in his transition. And, you know, he, like him and like Ernie Els, I would say, are like the two that if you're thinking about smooth swings, like they are the ones to emulate, which is very much not in the modern golf world today. You know, all of the pros these days are, you know, you think of Rory, Scotty, you know, Ricky, like they're all swinging it very aggressively, right? So nobody that really comes to mind for me has that like long, almost lazy, smooth swing. It doesn't work for me, but if I could go and emulate anyone, it would probably be that.
But, you know, I think that is the problem for amateurs is you don't want to emulate them, right? Just by seeing the swing. You know, that's like the middle-aged swing. Like, so right. and that was my problem. My problem was that I wanted to emulate Tiger's swing and Rory's swing. So Rory and I are the same height. That's why I jokingly called myself the Asian Rory in one of our videos. But I wanted to swing like Rory, and Rory has a very, it's controlled aggression. Yeah. And obviously he is sequencing properly and he's generating that speed in the correct manner. But I don't see that because it's so fast. I just see the aggressiveness. And so I wanted to be like Rory. Yeah. But the one thing that I will point out is even the power hitters, and it's controlled, right? But people with aggressive swings, the Tigers, the Rorys, they've all had a lot of injuries, a lot of rib injuries, a lot of back injuries. Even Bryson, when he bulked up to try to get that speed, he had wrist injuries and even a little bit of a minor back injury as well. And so even for pros, when they are trying to swing as hard as they can, it's not healthy for them. And we don't have the bodies the pros do, not even close. And so I think that's another argument that I have for not trying to just swing as aggressively as possible.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're kind of coming back and finding a common ground in this one, which is you should absolutely swing smooth in the places that it's going to give you a little bit more control, because control is going to be the key. Find your balance, find your transition, controlled aggression, and work your way back up to a tempo that you can use naturally instead of fighting it, while keeping everything else intact.
If you can hit the middle of the club face.
if you can hit the middle of it. So that's it. If you can hit the middle of the club face, if you can be balanced at the end of your swing, then go ahead and swing as hard as you want.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap it up here for today. We actually ended up going way longer than we expected. All 3 questions ran close to 2 hours. So we decided to split it into 2 parts. You just heard questions 1 and 2, and question 3 will drop in the next episode. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for that one. Thanks for listening to Off Track. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite podcast platforms. And check out our Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at TRAQ Golf. May your mulligans be many and your 3 putts be few.